Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Governance and Audit Committee meeting of Tuesday, the 13th of July. If we can start with the agenda today. And the first item on the agenda is the election of the Vice Chair. Clive was put forward for the Vice Chair at the last meeting, but due to Clive's current commitments, he felt he couldn't do the work justice, so he's declined. So we're looking for nominations for a Vice Chair for the municipal year 21-22. So can we have any nominations, please?
I'd like to nominate Paxton.
Paxton Hood-Williams, yeah.
Hood-Williams, yeah.
Paxton. So we've got Paxton Hood-Williams nominated. No other names?
Second.
Can we have someone to second that,
Yeah,
please?
I second that, Peter Black.
Thank you, Peter. Okay, then. Thank you very much and welcome back to the Governance and Audit Committee, Paxton.
All in favour?
All in favour? Yeah. Great. Just to let us be aware, I need to be away to catch a train at 11 o'clock this morning. So if we don't quite conclude the agenda, Paxton, if I can kindly hand over to you to conclude the meeting, but we may get to complete the meeting before then. So,
I knew there had to be some snag here, Chairman. Okay.
Okay. Can we have apologies for absence, please?
No apologies, Chair.
Thank you. Similarly, can we have any disclosures of personal and prejudicial interest, please?
Yes,
Jennifer.
Chair. So, yeah.
Sorry. Councillor Jeffrey. Sound is on mute, Councillor Rayner.
Hello.
Hello, my apologies. Item 5, annual report of school audits 2021-21. Can I declare a personal and prejudicial interest, and I will be leaving the meeting.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Peter Black.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Same item. I have a personal interest as the Governor of Pentre Harford School.
Thank you. Any other hands, please?
Yes, my hand is up, Chair. I'm also Governor of Pentre Harford School, personal interest.
Thank you, Councillor White. Any other hands? I'm not seeing any.
Okay. Sorry, Chair, can I just check? If we are governors of a school, should we be declaring a personal interest? I'm on Dylan Thomas, but it's not actually referred to at all in the report, so not too sure whether I need to or not.
I wouldn't have thought so, but is there anyone in the meeting from the legal team?
Yes, Chair, I'm here. No, Councillor Walton, if it's not on the agenda, you don't need to disclose an interest. This report deals with certain specific schools. If you're appointed as a governor, it's a personal interest only, and you can remain and speak. But if it's not on the agenda, it's not one of those schools concerned, then there's nothing to declare.
Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Walton. Okay, the next item on the agenda are the minutes of the meeting of the 9th of June. If we can take them page by page for accuracy, please. Page 1, page 2, page 3, page 4, page 5, page 6, and page 7. Can I have comments or acceptance that the minutes are a true reflection and are accurate, please? Can I have 2 hands up to support that? Councillor Black and Councillor Rayner. Yeah. Thank you very much. Okay. The next item on the is the annual report of schools audit, and I believe we've got Nick Davis with us today.
And Kelly Small.
And Kelly Small, is that? Okay, Nick, do you want to introduce the report?
Yes, of course. Thanks, Chair. So I'm Nick Davis. I'm the Principal Auditor for the Internal Audit section, and members will know me by now. I was here last month presenting our Q4 monitoring report, and once a year I present the school's annual report, which basically gives a summary of all the schools that we've audited. This year we've also carried out some thematic reviews So I'll give you a little bit more detail once I get into the report. So, as usual, this report is for information only, and therefore I'm just going to run through the main highlights of the document, and I'll invite any questions from members at the end. So if members can turn to agenda item number 5 in the reports pack, and if I can refer you to points 1.5 to 1.8, because our approach to auditing has been slightly different due to the COVID restrictions placed on the team and the inability to carry out any site visits. So 1.5 just explains those difficulties, and 1.6 and 1.7 explains the thematic reviews that we've covered in previously reported key risk areas of procurement and school funds. And it just confirms that we managed to successfully complete 3 thematic reviews across both primary, special and comprehensive schools. And 1.8 just confirms really we were also able to successfully complete 8 individual primary schools, and they were done remotely. So if we move on to page 11 and section 2, summary of the findings. So of the 27 primary schools that were scheduled to be audited, 8 were reviewed remotely, with 1 achieving a high level of assurance and 7 achieving a substantial level of assurance. The other 19 schools were included in the 2 thematic reviews of procurement and unofficial funds. 2.3, there were 4 secondary schools scheduled to be audited, but all 4 have been deferred to this year, i.e. 21-22, because we require site visits for those schools because of there's a little bit more going on in comprehensive schools. But we did complete a thematic review of procurement for that sector. And 2.4 just confirms that the 1 special school that was scheduled to be audited was included in both the thematic reviews along with the primary schools. Okay, if we move down to page 12 and section 3. So there's a table there, it just shows the 8 primary schools that were undertaken and finalised remotely. It shows the level of assurance for those 8 schools. And 3.4 confirms that we issued 84 recommendations, which is an average of 11 recommendations per school, and head teachers agreed to implement 100% of those recommendations. On to 3.6, gives a little bit more of a breakdown and an analysis about where the recommendations fell, i.e. in which audit area. So on to page 13, you can see the table at the top has got a breakdown of the percentages of where those recommendations were made. And then 3.8 lists some more notable changes really, i.e. School meals, inventory and IT. Moving on to 3.10 on page 14, we're starting to look at the thematic reviews, i.e. procurement. So the main areas of non-compliance for the primary and special schools that were reported, you can see the 4 main areas there. 3.11, the thematic reviews for the unofficial funds. Again, the areas of non-compliance have been listed underneath. And moving on to section 4, the secondary schools. As stated just now, the 4 schools have been carried forward to this year. However, we did undertake a procurement review for those 4 schools, and 4.2 again lists the main areas of non-compliance for them. Section 5 special schools, as we said, they were included in both the primary school thematic reviews. And moving on to section 6 on page 15, the other developments that the team work on during the year. Again, we continue to provide support to schools throughout the year on various different areas of work, and 6.4 really probably is quite a big area we're working on at the minute, is the revision of all school accounting instructions, and we're working with Kelly Small's team on that to update those documents to be more relevant and fit for purpose. And Kelly's team then will be arranging training courses for the schools to give them an update of what we've done. 6.6 is probably quite notable as well, that confirming that we carried out the thematic reviews this year, and we're going to continue with those thematic reviews next year, i.e. this year then, 21-22. We've highlighted some other key risk areas that we're going to be looking at again for the primary schools for this year. Moving on to section 8, quality measures. As members are aware, we do send out a quality control questionnaire to schools, and we do monitor those returns. And you can see in the table 8.5 that we issued 11 and 9 were returned. Finally, our conclusion on in section 9 at the bottom of page 17, 9.6. It's again our opinion, the internal audit section, based on the work that we've undertaken and the results from our reviews, that schools continue to provide generally a good level of assurance, subject to some instances of non-compliance, which we've listed in the body of the report. So moving down, there's a couple of appendices in the report on page 20, and you can see the list of the schools that were audited and finalised remotely, all the schools that were included in the thematic reviews, both procurement and unofficial funds. And just moving on to Appendix 3 is a list of the areas that we cover when we go and review the schools, and section Appendix 4 is our quality control questionnaire. So before I finish, I just wanted to pass you on to Kelly Small, as she is here, and she'll give you a quick update and any comments on the report and any other work that her team is currently undertaking at the minute.
Okay.
Thanks. Yeah, so from I got some feedback from an education department, point of view. We're really happy with the report, and the outcomes of the report, and we do welcome the support we get from audit as well. It does work quite well. We use the outcomes of the audit reports and the thematic reviews to share the points that have been picked up with all schools. So that's a sort of a little learning mechanism for them then to understand what they need to be put in right in their own schools. We, as Nick mentioned, we are looking at reviewing all the accounting instructions and the procurement guide for schools, and we had hoped to launch training for schools specifically on procurement for this term. Obviously, the schools have got quite a lot on their plates at the moment with COVID, so we are looking now at running the courses in the autumn term, so after September. With schools, we also carry on with the financial training that we provide to schools. So we do that periodically. We do that every school term for them as well. And we are, I think we've talked about this previously through the audit committee. We keep a check of attendance, and every 3 years, then we are prompting head teachers to review that financial training with us. We did also run a couple of recent sessions on the HMRC IR35 training course we've set up for schools. So this is where the schools employ individuals by invoice. So we're just trying to support the schools there and make sure that they are compliant with that. And it is something that was picked up with some of the audit reports. So I think that's about it really, unless anyone's got any questions.
Thank you, Kelly. Okay then, I'll open it up. I've got some questions myself, but we'll open up to the members firstly, please. Councillor Mike Lewis.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, my question is that the 3 schools that have been non-compliant in sending back their reports, I can understand the Craigvelin one, but the other, is there any reason why the other 2 haven't complied with our request for sending in information? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any responses?
Yeah, sorry, Mike. you did come in and out there, but I think I got the gist of what you were saying. Did you say the 3 schools for the unofficial funds where they didn't provide the information?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, right.
Yes.
So we did ask those schools on a number of occasions to provide that information. So what we've done, we've rolled them schools forward, and they'll now be included this year. So we will go back and check and ask those questions again to get that documentation in. So although they didn't provide them last year, they were valid reasons. Kelly probably touched on it as well with COVID and so on. But we haven't just left them there as not providing the information. We rolled them forward to this year to ask them for that information again. So they will be included in this year's schools programme.
Thank you.
Okay. I think Councillor Mike White's hand up.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Coming back to what was raised with Nick in the areas around about procurement again, 3.10 and 3.11 unofficial fund. I know obviously we said about training for schools and making aware of the actual procedures within procurement, and especially because these are the 2 same issues that keep cropping up. The annual term of governors will now start September when the schools come back, and governing bodies will hopefully be meeting then. Is it possible that these items can be put on the agenda for schools to bring it for their attention, and so that these items can actually be raised in the annual AGM meetings of the governing bodies of schools?
Yeah, we can do that. We can ask the clerks of governors to put those on as items for sure. Yeah.
Thank you, Kelly.
Good point. Yeah.
Yeah, and just to add to what Kelly said, is when we send out reports to the schools, they also go to the governing body as well, the chair of the governing body. So the governing body should be aware of the school reports as well. And I think Kelly's team do monitor then that they are minuted when they have their governing body minutes. So they are provided to the head teacher and they are provided to the governing body.
Thank you, Nick. Okay, I've not seen it. Oh, Julie Davis.
Thank you, Chair, and apologies if there's any background sound. Nick, I'd like to ask you about paragraph 3.7 of the report. With the Band A threshold being increased to 10,000 for procurement, non-compliance with contract procedure rules has improved, but what assurance can you give us that money both over and under £10,000 is being spent wisely by the school? I'm looking more at a best value aspect here.
Yeah, thank you, Julie. Yeah, as I've informed members there that our testing did confirm that the number of recommendations had reduced in that area, and that probably does coincide with the the threshold being raised from £5,000 to £10,000. But of course, anything that is under the 10,000, we still look for best value when we go out and we audit the schools, or whether we ask for the information to come in remotely. So although the banding has changed in that area, we do still look for best value quotations and so on. So it's not a case of anything under 10,000 that we don't check anymore. We still do. It's just because the band is raised, the 4 quotations really then doesn't kick in until the £10,000 limit is hit, either as a one-off purchase or a cumulative spend. So we are still looking at both under and over, and we have still got checks in those areas.
And was under 10,000 included in the thematic review for 2021?
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll still look at we'll still look at any purchases that we feel we need to under the 10,000. When we get the expenditure list from the schools. And we can still ask for best value for those purchases. Yeah.
Thank you. And a second question, if you don't mind. In Appendix 3, you kindly give the summary of the school's audit report, but I didn't see any specific mention of risk management. Do you look at how well schools are managing risk?
No, that's not part of our audit program. I mean, if you know, we do review the program every year. So if there is something that we need to add in, then we can certainly look at that. So yeah, that's something, you know, as I said, we do review every year, and we do get topics coming in. I think Kelly mentioned the IR35 instances where we will be updating the audit program. So yeah, if there's any concerns over risk management, we can add that in. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, can I just add to that question before I look to see further hands? With regard to the question on risk management, I think it's absolutely right and proper that it is included. And you cover governance with policies, committees, roles, responsibilities. I would see it as a natural fit for the governance review, because, you know, without risk management, you've got no governance. So I don't see why, you know, it can be left out from that section of the work. I've got some other questions, but are there any other hands up before I ask any questions? I'm not seeing any. No? Okay, I noticed then on page 10, reference to the suspension of all Yeston reports and inspections. Do we know when they recommence in that? Perhaps Kelly Small, you would know that?
Yes, they recommencing from September.
Okay. That's quite a gap with no inspection, isn't it?
Yeah, like you said, that's sort of out of our control really, because that's Eston's decision, I think, to sort of you know, give schools that breathing space with COVID.
So in April 2020 to September 2021, how are we assured as a council that there are no issues around areas that Yeston cover? Any assurance?
Just in general, from Eston, obviously we've still got our challenge advisors that have still been working with schools, school improvement advisors, I believe they're now being called. So they do still work with schools and do still go out and help them where necessary. So yeah, and obviously things have been a lot different. All schools have had operational plans and risk assessments that we've you know, been working with them on during COVID as well. Just, you know, and obviously any support they've needed. It's been a very strange year, as you can imagine. So any support they have needed, you know, we've had training sessions with them and all sorts. So yeah, hopefully everything's been okay. Okay,
for the purpose of the minutes, then can we make sure that we make reference to the gap in the Yeston inspections between April 2020 to September 21 and the other assurance mechanisms that the council have received in that interim period? The other question I've got is regards to comment on page 18. This may be for Nick, around the increase in non-compliance of the school funds, paragraph 9.5. Do we know the reasons for that, and what are we doing about that?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. It's probably in relation to a couple of years ago, we identified unofficial funds as a key area, and what we did, we increased our testing in that area. So we redrafted the accounting instructions for the schools for that area, and of course we increased the testing, and as a result of that, we've just picked up you know, more non-compliance in those areas. So it's as a result of us really looking at these funds in a bit more detail.
Okay, and Kelly Small, are you doing anything to improve that non-compliance area?
Yes, we are including that in our training now for schools a little bit in a bit more detail. We have more recently reshared the accounting instruction 11 that relates to the unofficial funds as well out to schools. And like I said, for the coming term now, we will be looking at more in-depth procurement training, you know, as well, and we can just keep putting that in basically every time we possibly can as a refresher.
Excellent, and just my final comments, I'm delighted to see that you're revising the accounting instructions and procurement and the unofficial funds and following that up with training. So hopefully we'll see improvement across all these areas in future audits. Thank you very much for that paper. Noting it's for information then. Unless there are any other comments, then perhaps we can move on.
So the chair going to call Councillor Jen Rayner back.
Okay, we're just calling in Councillor Rayner. Okay.
Yes, she's there.
Yeah, Councillor Rayner, welcome back to the Governance and Audit Committee. Agenda item 6 is the Internal Audit Board Function Annual Report, and I can see Jeff is going to address this one, I'm assuming. Welcome, Jeff. If you can take us briefly in a summary form through the report and picking up any issues that you would want us to notice at the committee, please.
Okay, thank you, Chair. And again, thank you, members, for inviting this report to come to you. As members are aware, it starts at page 29 in your agenda pack. And yes, what I propose to do is give you available opportunity to ask any questions at the end. And I'll take you through the key points that we do want to highlight to yourself. So with that in mind, I'm going to move on to point 3, which is a commentary on an overview of the activities. 3.1 just sets out broadly the areas of work. Again, that's familiar to members of this committee, but draw out then some of the specifics under that heading. So at 3.2, pleased to report that the NFI output has been received earlier in the year. It wasn't sure whether that would be affected by COVID, but that data has been received by ourselves and arrived with us in late January, February of this year. So work on that particular significant piece of work has started. There's some comments later on in relation to that. 3.3, if you, with your permission, Chair, I'm going to go into in some detail in a moment when we get to, and that's around the work that the team has done in supporting COVID payments and the risks associated with those payments. 3.4, I alluded to this, Chair, when we presented our annual plan 2 months ago, in terms of the increased volumes of work that the team were facing. What I can report now at year end, that when we analysed the data, it showed a near 50% increase in reported cases to the team. What I do need to stress to members, again, just for clarity, is these are reported incidents. These aren't all matters of fraud. When they are reviewed by ourselves, when they're assessed by ourselves, not all of them come through to be true fraud investigations. And as I mentioned there, it may well be that they're more appropriate for certain sectors or certain other responsibilities. In terms of understanding why that may be the case, I've made some commentary there in terms of, I think it is just reflective of our profile becoming embedded within Swansea now, and the people see us as a repository to report concerns that may be brought to their attention. And we've also made some commentary that may be reflective of changed working practices with regards where people were based in the communities within the last 18 months, and that may be a contributory factor. The detail there then, what we've done this year, Chair, hopefully if assist members, we had a habit of producing a number of appendices, and we believed it was quite difficult to read back and forth between the body of the report on the appendices. So we've now produced all our data in tabular form, and hopefully that assists members. So table 1 sets out some of the details of those volumes. The other thing I'm quite pleased that emerged on table 2 was that despite the increase in the volumes, the actual turnover that we achieved was actually improved this year. Be quite honest, Chair, I'm not quite sure how we achieved that. I think it was just working a lot harder and a lot smarter, but we managed to increase the turnover despite the increase in referrals. Moving over the page then, in relation to table 3, again, a new table that we've produced for you this year, Chair, that actually breaks down those referrals by type. And obviously what we've been able to do is make a comparison between the prior and the last year in terms of whether there's been any decrease or increase in particular those areas. I think the one point that I would highlight there is, although some of the percentage increases are relatively high, use business rates as an example there, an 80% increase, the actual volume of referrals is small. So you just have to have some caution around those percentage increases there, members. Towards the bottom of these overarching comments, we wanted to make members aware, and again this has been reported previously, and as a result of the Welsh audit paper last year and the paper presented by the Deputy Chief Executive earlier in the year, a significant amount of work already has commenced in relation to that work. Although it didn't fall into the work programme last year, we've already commenced that towards the end of last year, and significant progress has been made this year. I think the most significant one from this committee's perspective is 313, as reported there, is that reducing tackling fraud is now on the corporate risk register. And I'm personally pleased that that is finally there. So part 4 then just runs through some of the key objectives. We report at 4.1 in terms of our relationship with the Department for Work and Pension, and at table 4 some of the data associated with that. 4.2 highlights the National Fraud Initiative. Obviously early at this stage, Chair, data just haven't been received, but possibly again just draw to members' attention the high volume of work that we're dealing with at 4.24, just under 10,000 matches that the Council has received to review, and of those the concentrated areas, the 1,285 high-risk areas, and we're pleased to report that work in those particular areas has already commenced. 4.3 talks about fraud awareness. Again, that's improved and heightened again this year. Again, COVID related. You can see my commentary there at 4.3.1. There was a number of fraud exchanges and alerts received in relation to risks in that area, and we have established procedures for that intelligence to be used by us, importantly, but also shared with appropriate departments that may be at risk. And then 4.3.2, just for members to be aware, we received those alerts from a number of sources, so our council bankers will make us aware of risks from the industry, and another organisation we work with is the Credit Industry Fraud Avoidance Service, and we get a lot of information, again, being heightened this year, and this is just reflective overall in relation to COVID, an increase in phishing scams and mandate fraud attempts have been received. 4.3.3, we obviously, because of the situation this year, didn't do your training last year, but I know that's on the plan that Adam is producing to you in the next item. So interagency work and data exchange under 4.4. Again, as members will be aware, we act as the data or intelligence hub for the authority. It's twofold really, that's to ensure that data requests are appropriate and in accordance with the legislation, but secondly to understand if any of those data requests have a wider impact on any of our council services. Again, a marked increase as can be seen in 4.4.4, where there was a 37% increase in requests for information. Table 5 then, 4.5 and tables 5 and 6 talks about our employee matters, which we always report to members. It was pleasing that those figures had gone down last year. They represent a very, very small percentage of our workforce anyway, and the fact that they've decreased when arguably there could have been increased risks this year is pleasing to note. And again, at table 7, we give you some of those outcomes. So with your permission, Chair, I'm going to concentrate a little bit on 4.6 and talk around that. Completely new. This wasn't in the plan last year, but obviously we've had to react to this significantly. And I think 4.6.2 really sums it up. For the entire year, the majority of the functions resources were diverted into previously unknown and newly designed areas of expenditure. It's quite a dramatic sentence, really, but that is reflective of what we faced. Yes, we were able to use our skills and transfer some of our skills and knowledge into those areas, but these were things happening at a breakneck speed, and we had to react accordingly. What we did was we supported, and again, as Simon has reported in his internal audit report for last year, we diverted a number of resources to a number of areas of support that was going out to the public and to businesses in particular in Swansea. So that's been at multiple levels here. What we've done here is given you some detail in relation to a significant area that the team supported, and this was around the payment of discretionary grants for businesses. Now, there were a host of grants administered in terms of mandatory through the business rate system, and we also supported the revenues manager with areas of work there. But this was in particular in relation to the discretionary area, and the details are set out in particular in tables 8 and 9. But what we did was we worked with the team that were responsible for administering those grants, identified where those risks may be, and importantly devised a system that allowed hopefully only the correct grants to be paid. As a result of building that resilience, what we were pleased to report was that 25% of grants into those schemes were initially rejected for a number of reasons. And then what we were able to do, and this was a significant impact on our resources, was we then produced a nigh on 100% second check element to that as well. And that was in place really from about September last year through until April of this year. So it took out pretty much half of our year. And by doing so, that added another 11% rejection to those grants. So some 36% of applications for support were felt to be inappropriate. And there's some monetary value attributed to that. And at 464, as you're aware, Chair and members, it settles on a figure just under 2.5 million. I think the important thing to stress, however, is that not all of that is fraud. A lot of that was people attempting to gain money that they felt they were entitled to. Again, as we say, things were happening at breakneck speed, and it's quite apparent that some people genuinely were possibly trying to gain as much support as they could. And what we were able to do by assisting the process was identify where that support should come from. So they were redirected to appropriate schemes of support. As I mentioned there alongside, we received a lot of information from other agencies, other government departments, other authorities who were similarly going through this journey there. And at 465, just the last sentence I highlight for members, 8 high-level COVID fraud alerts were received from the National Anti-Fraud Work, which had identified multiple fraudulent attacks. And it's just that small word there, and hundreds of bank accounts that were being used to obtain grants. What we were able to do through the mechanisms that we have in place was to actually identify if we had paid any of those hundreds of accounts that were being used for fraud. And I'm pleased to report for members that we've had no matches on any of those accounts. So it shows that the systems that we put in place were extremely resilient to those sort of attacks. And there's some closing commentary in 4.6 to 4.68 in relation to that. And as I've already highlighted, Chair, some of the details within that work are shown at tables 8 and table 9. So that brings me to my conclusions in relation to the report, Chair, under part 5. I'm putting this at the back end of the report. Nick mentioned it right at the beginning. Yes, our work programme was dramatically affected by COVID, and how we have to deliver that. We are still working remotely at home, or there is some sense of normality returning, but ostensibly for the whole of last year we provided this service working from home. The consequence, or the direct consequence really, of the diversion of our resources last year was that only one of the planned activity outcomes for last year was fully achieved, and that is set out in the accompanying appendices. I don't propose to go through those for members. Yes, it is twofold. I think the resources is the continuing issue, and I know members have been very supportive of the resources issue. But it's fair to say, and I make that comment under 5.4, the main factor for not achieving the planned outcomes was the diversion of resources for COVID-19 grant support work. What I would assure members, however, is that in relation to employee matters that we take more seriously, where there was the need for urgent and priority action in relation to employee matters, that did continue to happen. I think the other balanced comment that I make there, Chair, is a fair one to say, is despite those pressures that came to us from COVID and the positive outcomes that we brought in relation to fraud prevention around that, we did have more fraud reports last year. We reviewed more of them, And I think ultimately we did have a positive impact protecting the council members and citizens of Swansea from fraud and from losing money last year. I'll conclude there, Chair, and take any questions.
Thank you very much, Jeff. It's a really comprehensive summary of what you've achieved during the year. I've got some hands up now. Councillor Mike Lewis.
Thank you, Chair. Hi, Jeff. Yeah, it's only one. I've been right through the report and read it all, and it's very, very good. The only thing that's confusing me really is applications reviewed by grant type, Table 8, fraud assistance in COVID grants support supply by volume. Under the premises adaptation grant, I see you've approved 166 grants, but then you've only had 110 applications. Could you explain the difference there, please? I'm a bit confused by that.
And in all fairness, Councillor Lewis, I am seeing that apparent contradiction for the first time as well. My colleague, Mr. Rogers, Jonathan's on the call. He may have
basically, Councillor Lewis, I looked at 110 grants. When I was looking at this work, once I got to a stage, I felt that Richard Horlock's team were administering these grants, and I was not adding anything to the process. So they approved 166 in total, but we only, as a fraud team, reviewed 110 of them. Does that make sense?
Yes, I've got it now. Thank you. It was just a bit confused I was by it.
No, it's a fair question.
I assumed that you looked at them all because you were reporting on them. But thank you for that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
That's fine.
Thank you. Julie Davis.
Thank you, Chair. I think we all appreciate the agility with which you responded to the COVID fraud risk, so thank you for that. My point might seem a little petty given all that you've delivered during the year, but I just wanted to ask, in Appendix 1, points 1, 3, 5 and 6, your aims have not been achieved in terms of housing tenancy fraud and council tax reduction fraud. I was wondering if you've got any plans in place to look at the referrals that you've received during this current audit year.
Yes, and that has already started. I'll speak for Jonathan. That is dominating our time completely at the moment. So we started to do some of, I'm reluctant to use the word recovery work, Julie, but in reality, as you said, it was picking up from some of the matters that we had to put down from a priority point of view, and that review is currently underway. It's also aligned itself with Ben having made the decision that we can return to some of the normal work as well. That was the contra issue, that there was work that we could pick up, but COVID restrictions would still prevent us from actually doing some of that. So we prioritise other areas that we could work within. But yeah, to give you that assurance, yeah, in both of those areas, both the social sector and regards to the council tax reduction fraud, that work is now picking back up.
Great, thank you very much.
Councillor Leslie Walton.
Thanks, Chair. Hi, Jeff. It's a similar question, really. It's on from the same table. Point number 7, raising awareness. And I totally appreciate that it's something that you've not yet achieved, but it's the making the public aware. And I think you'll agree that it's really important to keep them on side and show that the council is taking this work very seriously, because in many cases it will affect them if we don't. And I was just wondering, hopefully that you're going to start looking at that. What kind of things are you going to introduce to make sure that the public are being made aware?
Yeah, I mean, there's twofold there, and I can already see Simon's hand to come up and support me with what I'm about to say. One of the traditional tools that we've used to raise the profile, Councillor Walton, is to report outcomes. So in particular, with regards work with the DWP historically, we've promoted and reported successful outcomes, twofold really. One, to act as a prevention tool, but also to give members of the public assurance that they can report matters to us and the matters will be addressed. Obviously, the opportunities to report such matters were reduced dramatically last year. The second thing that we probably will be doing off the back of the success this year, and again, there was a pre-release to the media made last week, and there's been some press coverage in relation to that. It will be another opportunity to again promote the reporting tools that are available to members of the public, and to make sure that those are available in multiple places to multiple people at the same time. So it's just about, I suppose, really raising that profile. I suppose the only caveat to that, Councillor Walton, is it's got to equally match the resources available in terms of raising that profile.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Simon Cockings, you've got.
Yes, thanks, Chair. Just to pick up on that point from Leslie, really. I'm not sure if members are aware, but we did issue a press release last week in relation to the work that's been done by the fraud team. Some of the recommendations that came out of the Audit Wales report also touch on publicity and increased awareness at all levels, at corporate level and down to employee and public level. So it is something we are working on and proactively working on at the moment, and we'll continue to progress going forward. Just on a personal point, when Jeff said that COVID wasn't on the plan for this year, I think that's a bit of an understatement, really, in terms of our capabilities and coping with it, essentially. My thanks to Jeff and Johnny for definitely, taking the reins with that and running with it and doing a really good job for the council. I mean, it proves itself in the findings that we've presented with today. So just my thanks to the team for all their hard work over the year, really.
Thank you. No other questions. I can't see any. Jack Jones.
Yeah, I had my. Yeah, well, the first point really is to congratulate the team. I must admit, I know I've asked questions in the past with regards to fraudulent grant applications. With the information you've actually supplied, I think it's absolutely phenomenal. When you think of hundreds or probably thousands of millions that have been fraudulently claimed in the rest of the country. So, well done there. But going back to what you actually said earlier with regards to the National Fraud Initiative, the 10,000 matches that are late as well, what sort of impact is that going to have with regards to your work?
I can't deny it does have an impact on our work, Councillor Jones. Fortunately, however, we have reasonably sophisticated systems here in Swansea that the majority of the work undertaken actually goes out to the relevant department. So we act as the hub for the receipt of the information. We monitor and track its completion. But the actual check-in, I mean, the other thing that's important to mention there is those are 10,000 matches. They are not 10,000 proven fraud cases. So they're basically sets of data that match, but there may be a valid reason for those matches. So what we basically do is there's, as I say, a mechanism by which that goes out to the relevant client department who undertake those checks, and anything that is highlighted for concern within those then comes back to us from a fraud point of view. And Simon, from a control point of view, actually monitors the progress of that exercise. And again, I am pleased to report that despite, the C word again, despite COVID, there has been significant progress made by a number of the client departments in relation to that already this year.
Sorry, actually going on from that, what does the 10,000 compare to previous years? Is it a lot more? Or?
No, it's about comparable. I think we had something in the region of 9,800 last year, Jonathan. Is that about right?
Something like that. Yeah, it's pretty constant.
Yeah, and one of the reasons that is constant, and it is a flaw within NFI, unfortunately, is that you do get repeat matches. So even though some of these matches may have occurred in 2018 and we cleared them as appropriate matches and non-fraudulent, the actual mechanism by which it's done on the biannual basis will bring those back. So the figure, unfortunately, tends to be, or the core figure tends to be constant, and there's a small increase or decrease in the headline figure above that, Councillor Jones.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you very much. Ben Smith, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be brief. I equally wanted to come in and place on record my immense thanks to Jonathan and Jeff, who've worked tremendously hard and flexibly throughout the challenges. It's also right that I reflect that you've had a very useful microcosm of what has been impacted upon a number of other staff, Julia Morgan's Revenues and Benefits team and Paul Relf's team. As both Jonathan and Jeff have referred to, I mean, these were schemes designed at speed, and many of them, from seeing that wider perspective across all the schemes, I think a lot of people were just confused as to what they were eligible to claim for, and some of them just tried to claim for everything, either to try and just maximise entitlement or just because it was really complicated and convoluted getting through. But as you can clearly see from the report, the dedicated fraud team, and we're lucky to have a dedicated fraud team, has shown its absolute value, its absolute flexibility, and I'm sure the committee can take huge comfort from the visibility. And I think that the proactive comms has also worked really well. The bit we are a little bit nervous about, and the team have made quite clear, is that matches and disallowance doesn't mean that it was fraud, and perhaps there was a bit too much emphasis on everything being fraud. But other than that, I think the proactive comms has really helped in terms of, again, raising the profile. I don't think anyone could think other than Swansea's fraud team is here working its socks off and working really well with both the Revenues and Benefits team who had to administer most of the mainstream grants, and Paul Relf's team who had to administer the more tricky ones. By the definition, discretionary grants, it came down to what did we think was reasonable. Although it was a national set of schemes, it was written as my personal discretion as to who to get a grant and who not. But it has demonstrated most clearly the value of it, and the committee has reflected previously on resources, and the team have referred to it. I remain acutely conscious of that, and I am intending to take forward matters with the team, and because I would remind members that the budget set did include providing some additional money for me to spend as a Section 151 officer on matters that I felt were relevant and important, and I think the team have shown their immense value that they've added to the authority's standing and reputation through the year, so it would have been remiss of me not to come in and place that on record as well, even though Simon already has. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ben. I don't see any more hands up. I'd just like to sort of reflect on some of those comments. Oh, Leslie, did you want to come in?
Yeah, just quick. I meant to say this at the time. I can only endorse everything that Ben has said and Simon has said. I think listening to the report, it's quite astounding how much progress the team has made, considering the circumstances all staff have been working on this year. So thanks to all of you.
Thank you. And that was just about what I was going to say, Leslie, in support of that. I think it's quite impressive what you have achieved during that period of COVID and the impact that has had. And I'm delighted that, Ben, you're going to try and recognise that for additional reasons, perhaps for Jeff and Jonathan. So I think we can almost look forward to seeing a lot more activity and a lot more successes. But thank you very much, Jeff and Jonathan, for all the work that you put in. I'm sure the leader and the chief executive of the council are very proud and impressed with what they've got. Thank you very much. The next item on the agenda is the Draft Governance and Audit Committee Training Programme. I'm not quite sure who's taking this.
It'll be me, Chair. Yes, if that's okay.
Before you start, I'm going to have to hand over to Paxton. Paxton can take over from here.
That'll be fine, Chairman.
Most of the reports are for information, and I'm sure I can leave the rest of it in Paxton's capable hands. Thank you, Paxton.
Okay. Thank you, Chairman. And Adam, it's over to you then.
Well, thank you. In terms of the report pack, this is item number 7, pages 47 to 59. So it's the Draft Governance and Audit Committee Training Programme. This is from guidance that was issued by the Chartered Institute of Public Finance and Accountancy, CIPFA, and it was titled Practical Guidance for Local Authorities and Police, and this provides a knowledge and skills framework for audit committees. The draft training programme takes account of those areas, and they're listed on pages 47 and 48, as well as wider knowledge in connection with the operation of the council and council services, governance and assurance. It's a live document and will be added to as new areas of interest or knowledge or skills are identified through the year, which need the committee to either be aware of or undertake training in. So an example of that would be, one thing already identified is the Future Generations Act, which doesn't currently feature within the training program, but will be picked up under the induction element. So I'm going to keep it short and sweet for this one, and just take any questions and ask that the committee approve the training program when reviewed. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Adam. I am not seeing any hands up at the moment. I don't know if anybody has got any comments that they want to add. It looks fairly comprehensive, and I'm just wondering how much time you're going to be spending in training, Adam. It looks like it could be weeks, if not months, looking at that list, but I'm sure you'll boil that down to something far more sensible in that sense. And I think it'll be useful. It'll always be useful for us, any training we get, and we will look forward to receiving that. Anybody else just want to say anything now before we move on? Okay, thank you, Adam, for that. And
Chair, very quick. I just really endorse what you've just said. I think any training is always useful. And for some of us who've been on this committee a while, refresher training is no bad thing. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't think there's any training session where you don't learn something, however many times you've covered the subject in the past, to be honest. And refreshers are always useful, and I agree with you there, Leslie, that's for sure. So if I may, then I'll move on to item 8. And that's the Audit Wales follow-up review of corporate safeguarding arrangements for children in Swansea Council. Simon, you're on the call. Do you want to pick that up and run with it?
Sorry, Paxton, if I just go back to the training. Yeah, sorry. If I could go back to the training issue. In the past, members have had training before committee meetings. So I just wanted to check if we were okay with that going forward. Obviously, we need to discuss this with Democratic Services to coordinate the timing and things. But if members are okay with the training taking place outside of the meeting and in advance of the meetings, if that would be okay, just to get a consensus that would be agreeable with you all, so we can take that forward.
If there's anybody who disagrees with that, now is your chance to say it. Mike? Mike, did you want to say something?
No, I would just put my hand up to agree with it, Paxton, sorry.
Okay, thanks, Mike. Peter?
Yeah, I mean, I think we had that process in before when we were meeting in the Guildhall, but with online meetings, I think it's not necessary to do it in that way. So it is equally practical to hold online training sessions outside of the normal meeting times. I think we did it before because we were all in the Guildhall for that meeting, but I think online meetings gives you a lot more flexibility.
Yeah, that's fine. I'll feed that back to Democratic Services, and we'll get an email sent around for consensus later on.
Okay. Sorry, occasionally I'm losing the listing on the right hand side, which says who's got their hands up. As it is at the moment, I don't think anybody has, unless you have, Jennifer.
Thank you. Just echoing what Peter has said. And also there's the opportunity for online training as well. When new documents come out, those can be shared. We don't have to sit there and be read to. We can have, if we have the information beforehand, then we have a greater opportunity to ask questions and discuss it in detail. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Jennifer. I'm not seeing anybody else at the moment. I'm sure those messages will be taken on board. I know Jeremy's listening to this as well as Simon and Adam, so I'm sure we'll see what comes out of that. Okay, sorry, in that case now I will move on to item 8, which is the follow-up review of corporate safeguarding arrangements for children in Swansea. Simon, you're on the call. Do you want to take us through this, please?
Yes, thanks, Chair. I'm the author of this report, which went, I think, as you're probably aware, to the Child and Family Scrutiny Performance Panel in October 2020. Yes. It's a report that arises out of fieldwork undertaken by Audit Wales on the corporate safeguarding arrangements, particularly focused on children. I think it was towards the end of 2019 they came to interviewers, and then the report was published in February 2020. So I suppose there's a little bit of a time lag, but in terms of the report, I can take you through it briefly. The report sort of shows, firstly, that
the arrangements that Swansea have in place are quite robust. We have a safeguarding as everybody's a business approach to corporate safeguarding, which is very inclusive. It involves our employees, elected members, volunteers, and contractors. We have a new well, at the time of the review, it was a new corporate safeguarding policy. It had been updated through the people, well, as it was then, the Policy and Practice Development Committee, the People PDC. We're focusing on the rights of children, and we have safeguarding as a corporate priority. We have governance arrangements in place, which within the council through a corporate safeguarding group, which is jointly chaired by the Director of Social Services and the cabinet member, the lead cabinet member. And obviously, as a council, we report into the Regional Safeguarding Board as well. So the WAO, when they came to look at us, I interviewed a number of the key people involved and elected the lead members and things, and they found that we'd addressed most of the recommendations in the previous work, which was undertaken. I think it was round about the time we were just coming off Serious Concerns Protocol. As they said, there are a number of other Welsh authorities have been reviewed as subject to this review, but not all of them, as it happens. So it's quite. I'm never quite sure why they focus on us, whether it's a legacy of those concerns, and the follow-up report was then published, of which there was 9 recommendations provided, which are listed. And within the report that was given to Child and Family Scrutiny, we've updated on progress on all of the recommendations as of that time, October sort of 2020. And so the recommendations were mainly around disclosure and barring service and their policy, which I believe now has been updated, although whether it's been signed off, I'm not quite sure at this as it stands. We've strengthened our recruitment and selection policy and reflected the emphasis on DBS check and risk assessing for DBS. The central system for monitoring and recording volunteer information, well, obviously that's a broader issue around staffing and whether we have a central system for staff records relating to a range of things, but particularly employment and training and DBS checks. I mean, work is underway on that, as far as I understand, through the Oracle system. And but as it stands, the policy point of view, the expectation is that managers have keep up to date on those issues within their area of service in terms of compliance around DBS and training. There's documentation around tendering, as those elements have been updated. The recent discussion was Audit Wales were looking to us for examples of our documentation to share with other local authorities. So we have progressed that quite well, and we had at the time of the review. But in monitoring of safeguarding elements within contractual provisions, that's something that isn't equal across the whole service. I mean, social services has historically had strong contract monitoring arrangements because we have to really in terms of the quality of care within social care type services. But whether that's across all councils' provision is something that we'd have to look at more systematically. Performance measures are reviewed annually, and we are looking at a new performance management framework as part of the Local Government and Governance Act. So that will be part of that process. And the P7 reflects on the violence against women, domestic abuse. Now that was subject of a separate review by Audit Wales, and they've sort of combined that the mandatory training element within this. But I believe that was reported separately to the scrutiny panel, and it reflects a similar issue we have around recording of compliance of training across the whole employee base, and similarly in P8 and P9. So in terms of this report, what I included was the programme for the most recent version of the programme for the corporate safeguarding group, which is broken down into 6 work groups, which cover off most of the areas: safe employment, safe workforce, safe practice and safe partnerships are working together now because it reflects our response to safeguarding concerns, which is generally a collaborative one. The safe voice is putting the person who is vulnerable at the centre of our work and our processes, and safe performance, which is about that golden thread running through everything that we do. And the Appendix 2 within the report on the agenda is about how those specific recommendations map across to the work groups that are linked to corporate safeguarding. So what I'm sort of reassuring the group on is that there is work being undertaken on behalf of the corporate safeguarding group under those 5 work group areas, and that those groups individually are picking up the recommendations as ongoing work, as continuous improvement where we can. But obviously there are dependencies on things like the Oracle system development.
Okay, thank you, Simon. It was comprehensive and tells us where we are in that respect. Obviously, this report is slightly historical at the moment, as you made reference to. I think in terms of safeguarding, there's quite a history behind that in Swansea since the the intervention board was in place in 2009, I think it was, because we set up our own corporate board to look at it. That went eventually to Western Bay, and as a result of that, I know Jack Stowe at the time set up a public protection committee. I'm saying that now because Adam is here at the moment, and I'd be interested to know whether that public protection committee is still operating in that sense. And the other thing that you mentioned quite a lot in that report, Simon, was the Dbs testing. It's certainly been something that's been of concern to this audit committee over the last few months, and we still haven't completely written that off yet in terms of having completed our process in it. So that is still ongoing, and it's something we will continue to look at. As I say, I've got a number of hands here, and I'm going to call them in the order I got them. So, Peter, you first of all, if I may, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I've actually got 4 questions, if that's okay. The first one relations to paragraph 5.6 at the bottom of page 68. The progress action point on that one. I'm not quite clear, actually. It says performance measures related to safeguarding have been included in the Council's quarterly performance monitoring reports, although they are being taken out. So is that they have been taken out, or they are being taken out for 2021? And if so, why?
Okay, I'll take that. Well, it's a part of an ongoing review. So decisions, I guess, are taken at Cabinet and Corporate Management team on what we include. But I think there have been concerns about how this is reported, really, and where we've generally reported the number of staff as a number and the number of people undertaking training and worked out a percentage on that basis. But actually, that's not an accurate way. It doesn't show individual staff's compliance. So what we need, obviously, is a system which has individual records of staff and, you know, their own personal records of whether they've completed mandatory training, not just in safeguarding, across a number of areas, so that we can be sure then that that percentage is an accurate reflection of whether individual staff are compliant, so we can actually isolate those who aren't compliant. So at the moment, we're as a council, we're not in that at that stage. So I think in pending those more robust arrangements on our report, in terms of the Wales audit, what they came concerned about was, you know, when we were reporting these things, often we had a different number of staff reported, you know, because when you press a button at a point in time, you'll get a different number. So, you know, and then obviously across schools, the schools have their own systems for reporting on their individual staff groups, don't they? So pulling all that information is, you know, what they've asked us for is a single central system for tracking all of that. Well, we haven't got that yet. It's something that as far as I'm aware, is ongoing with the Oracle Fusion project.
So
So
these
does that-
performance measures are being taken out, but you're trying to work up a more robust one. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, on recommendation 7 on paragraph 5.7, this I think he's talking about the training for school staff, isn't it? Which I know is difficult to monitor because schools basically are a law unto themselves. Are we actually keeping a central record of that? Is that possible?
I believe schools are, yes, and then we've asked for that to be reported into the corporate safeguarding group.
Right, so we are going to have some record on that. Okay, great. And then on recommendation P8 5.8, the council's investment in Oracle expected to deliver improvements about how staff records are managed. Do we have a timescale for that?
I believe there's been some delay in the program due to the situation around COVID. So I'm not fully aware of that. The corporate safeguarding group has asked that the lead transformation officer reports on that to the next meeting.
Okay.
So yeah.
So that assumably the children's committee, which Paxton chairs, will be able to monitor that as part of that. Okay, and then finally on 5.9, it says the council needs to accelerate the rate of compliance with the completion of mandatory safeguarding training, but the progress doesn't actually refer to whether you're accelerating it or not.
No, well, in terms of, we've had to rewrite all the training materials because there's a new national framework around safeguarding. So that's one issue that was there's a factor in. And that was happening at the time of the review. So we were waiting on Welsh Government guidance around the new safeguarding arrangements. And we have redrafted all of the levels of training that we offer. And some of these are offered online as well. So there's quite a lot of work. And obviously a lot of our training staff in the last 18 months have been busy, have been taken off training, direct face-to-face training to do other things as well. So there are a number of issues that are around training, but the training offer is there now, and it is being taken up, and it is has all been updated. So we're working on priorities within that now. So we're refocusing the new training materials at lead officers initially in all of the service areas, because they're free then to do face-to-face training within their service areas and then key staff groups.
Okay, so I don't tend to use the word acceleration Welsh Government guidance in the same sentence that often. Okay, thanks for that, Chair.
Okay, Julie.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Hi, Simon.
Hi,
I've got
Julie.
3 questions, if that's okay.
Yes,
2 of them relate to Appendix 2.
yes.
The action plan, only 2 out of the 9 actions have got any delivery dates assigned to them. And those 2 have actually been missed. So from an audit committee perspective, I would like to see an action plan that does have delivery dates to give us some assurance as to when these recommendations are going to be addressed.
Okay. I mean, in terms of that, there are contingencies really, in terms of something being fully signed off, isn't it? The contingency I've mentioned around a system for recording this information that's reliable and robust across the whole council. So we haven't been able to factor in timescales on that really until that work is set by the within a separate project.
Right,
so
but wouldn't, for example, with Oracle Cloud, wouldn't they have delivery timescales that you could use?
Yeah, but they wouldn't come under our account. They're not accountable to the corporate safeguarding group in that sense, are they? So we've asked for reassurances that the work is specified and it is going to be delivered in time. But at the moment, we've asked for a dialogue with that, and we hopefully that'll take place in September.
Okay, and I don't know what the plans are for reporting back to Audit Committee, but I think I would like to have reassurance that the delivery timescales are put in place. So perhaps you can follow that one up.
Sure.
The second one, P3 assigns a recommendation for central recording and monitoring to the Safe Workforce Group.
Mm-hmm.
but there's no mention when I look at the aims of that group. There's no mention of volunteers, and that was one of the key aspects of Audit Wales's report. So perhaps you could follow that up with Teresa.
Yeah, work is going on around a safeguarding policy within both the people PDC and within that, you know, supported by that group as well, you know, so, yeah, so I'm reassured about that.
Okay,
yeah.
I just wanted to make sure
that still doesn't means we still have to work on that central system of managing that information as well.
I just wanted to make sure the volunteering didn't fall between the cracks. And in terms of the monitoring of contracts, I understand that social services has quite a robust system, but I do have concerns about schools because they've recently elected not to renew their SLA for procurement. So if schools are doing their own procurement, I think that is going to be a potential risk area going forward. And do you have any plans?
I can't comment on that at the moment, no.
Okay. Vice Chair, I don't know how we follow that up, whether...
I think we will need to follow that up, and obviously, look, Simon, we will look to you to come back to us with something on that. All right, in the not too distant future is what it amounts to, please.
Okay.
All right.
Chair, can I just come in on that last point, if I may? Just sorry, Jen, to jump in front of you, but just relating to the procurement issue. I know the Director of Education is meeting with the head of procurement to just have a look at what safeguards can be put in place. Obviously, we can't address that in terms of an SLA. The school is free to be part of or excluded from the SLA at their choice. What we have done is make the schools very much aware of what that implications would be for the school should something go wrong. And we're trying to talk to the schools to see what is the issue, why don't they want to be part of the SLA, and how can we work better together to get them back in? Because you're right, there is a risk there, but the schools are independent and they have the right to choose whatever procurement system they wish to go down. So long as they meet the procurement regulations, then they can do it however they choose. So although it is a risk, it is a managed risk through the Director of Education to make sure the school is aware of their responsibilities, and that is underway and being picked up.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Adam. Is that it, Julie?
Yes, thank you.
In that case, I'll call in Jennifer. You're muted, Jennifer.
Thanks, Chair, and thank you to my colleagues who raised a number of issues that are of concern. Can I actually go back to the issue of volunteers? Can we have a clear commitment that all volunteers in schools will be moved onto the Oracle system as soon as that is running? Because we have this big banner of safeguarding is everybody's business. I was a bit surprised to find, well, to hear somebody say, oh, well, Oracle is outside of the safeguarding arrangements. And I'm thinking, if it is the major repository of all recorded information on our volunteers and staff, how can it exist outside? So I think we need to look at how we include volunteers from all parts of the council within that Oracle system. My second issue relates to training of councillors and councillors in particular as school governors. At the moment, I would say the training for councillors is patchy. And when I made inquiries last year, there was a suggestion that if a councillor had undertaken safeguarding training once, that was sufficient. And yet we know, for instance, a number of schools and other organisations are saying safeguarding training should be upgraded every 3 years because safeguarding is an ongoing, developing, learning situation which we all got to respond to. So what is the future training policy for all councillors? And my other query relates to Appendix 2, where we learn of, we're aware there's a regional safeguarding board, but we have the council's corporate safeguarding group, the safe employment group, the safe performance group, the safe workforce group, and the safe practice partnership group. Do all those groups have terms of reference? Because looking at it, I thought there's a bit of an opportunity here for people to pass the bucks a bit strong, but for issues to fall through the gap. Oh, it's not us, it's the other group. So could we have clarity on exactly what these groups are doing and what they're not doing? Because I think it's still a bit sort of not really tied down as to where the real responsibilities lie and how we get information up and down the system. And that's against the background. There have been a number of cases in recent months, one in Bridgend, certainly across all of Wales, where a number of schools where girls have said it's really not worth reporting incidents, which should be safeguarding, because there's just no response coming forward. And in Swansea, I would highlight the fact that there has been a big change, which I know social services are concerned about, and that is the increasing number of private children's homes, where children are coming into the area with, shall we say, patterns and experience of abuse and safeguarding issues, which we may not be prepared for. So I think we need to ensure that this system has a dynamic for change and can take on a lot of new information. And if we have these groups, we need clarity on what each one is actually addressing, rather than just setting up a group and hoping it'll all work out. Thank you.
Who wants to come back on that? Is it Simon, or do you want to say anything on this, Adam?
Yeah, I'll just come back, and then I think Jen, there are some that you've mentioned there that I'm not aware of, and you rattled off quite a list, and I think for me, it's not only what are their terms of reference, but who do they report to, and what's the hierarchy in terms of reporting. So I think rather than try and give an answer today, I'll talk to Simon outside of the meeting, have a look at what the various groups are, terms of reference, and then bring a report back to Audit, I think, as soon as we can, that just reassures and gives that assurance of that flow that Jen talked about, what the terms of reference, what's picked up within each, and whether or not there is some merit there in combining some of those together and streamlining it. Kind of feels about right, but without seeing the terms of reference, we just need to take that away. So I'll pick up with Simon outside of here, and we'll report back to Audit as and when we can. We've got all the information.
Okay, Adam, I think that would be a sensible thing to do, and obviously Jeremy will keep an eye on that and make sure that that goes into our tracker programs, etc., to make sure that that happens. You've still got your hand up, Julie. Did you want to ask any further questions?
No, sorry, my mistake.
Okay. Mike White, Mike Lewis. Sorry, Mike White. Sorry.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Very, these obviously the information given about schools opting out of the SLA regarding the issue around safeguarding. Is there has any area been identified as to the reasons why schools are making this decision? I can see Jen with a hand up, but I know going back on past instances with SLAs is about getting value for money, and when you needed the service, it wasn't always being provided. But just if there was any idea of what were the main reasons behind this taken by schools. Thank you, Chair.
Did you want to say something, Jennifer?
Yes, if I could come in, Mike's hit the nail on the head. It was not understood by schools and governing body as providing value for money, was too long, and didn't always produce the best workforce in the locality. So as you know, the rules have been changed, so schools can make their own provision up to the value of £10,000 if they follow the right process. And also the procurement package paid little attention to safeguarding. Safeguarding remains with schools, who have to ensure that children are not left alone without people who have not got the right checks and balances to enable that person to work in a sole position with children. So I'm never sure what the procurement issue with safeguarding is, because there is a counter argument outside of the schools in that we must give people a second chance, not necessarily if they have a history of offensive behaviour with children or abuse of elderly or women or anyone. But in terms of who actually gets close contact with children, that would retain the school's responsibility. But as Mike White has said, more and more opted out because the procurement exercise was unwieldy, expensive, and did not give value for money. And that's the fate of a number of SLAs. And if people want to come back to SLAs, they need to consider the reasons why schools left and address the shortcomings in the SLAs and work with school governors.
I suspect that, well, we're all as virtually governors, I guess, so I think we understand fully the comments that are being made there, and certainly Mike raising that it is a problem with the SLAs, and I know schools do opt out of a lot of SLAs, especially when they think they're not getting value for money. So that's coming back to what we're providing again within the council, I think, Adam.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think there's a couple of things. I think part of it is that schools are also getting themselves into a position where they believe they have now the expertise in certain areas, and are looking at where, you know, like we all are, at budgets and how do we best spend that money in terms of the support mechanism they have. So they may employ people at a certain time that perhaps have those skills, but those people then perhaps will move on or are no longer available in terms of up to date with that information, and that's where the risk comes in. I think that it's a mixed bag across all the services that we offer in terms of SLAs. You know, bursars have financial experience perhaps in some areas, so they'll think they'll step away. It's the added value we bring as a council, and unfortunately there is also a professionalism that comes with a council in terms of the department that we bring in. So if you take general procurement, for example, it's the strength of knowledge, not only in terms of low-level procurement, but in terms of contracts, the legality side of it. And it's that extra strength that comes in that is very difficult to measure until there's a problem. And if something goes wrong, that's what you pay for. It's like many of you, I'm sure, will have car insurance, home insurance, and you scrutinize that, but you look for the best deal you can get. The only time you know if you've got good insurance is when you have to claim on it and you find they either pay out or they don't pay out. And unfortunately, you know, schools are in a position where, you know, they have challenges within their budgets. They're looking for the best value. It's not always the best value when you need it. It might be financially, but not in terms of the support and help that they get should something go wrong. So I think part of it is for us to maybe just make them aware of that. But on a tightening budget, sometimes people will look for the short-term win of money rather than the long-term gain of return on investment.
What you're saying, I think, is that value for money is better than just cost. I think is
absolutely, yeah.
But I'm sure everybody on this panel will be taking that back to their governor groups anyway. Okay. And I don't see any other hands coming up on this. I will just say on that basis to Simon, thank you for taking us through that. It is an interesting area, and certainly where we're talking, you are talking in terms of DBS a lot in that respect of that, and we will be picking that up, as I say, as we're going on forward. So there are a number of things there, but safeguarding is key, and we understand that fully. So thank you for that, Simon. That's going to move me on to item 9, which is the Governance and Audit Committee Action Tracker Report. It's there for you to see and have a look at. I don't know if anybody's got any particular comments on it. There's still a few things that we are still having to monitor and make sure that comes back. So there's a hand up. I'm not sure who it is. Simon, you wanted to come in?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Sorry, Paxton. In relation to the DBS from the previous item, just wanted to give members an update. We have got a full audit of council-wide DBS on the plan for this financial year. I mean, as members are aware, we've had 2 follow-up reviews of the DBS review that came to committee, I think it was about 12 months ago. So there were still some uncompleted recommendations in those follow-ups. So we've included a full review of DBS for 21-22, again, just to do a complete new review of it for the council generally. We've also included one of the thematic reviews for schools this year is primarily concentrated on DBS. So again, that would give us some assurance on DBS in a school setting as well. We've started to plan that review. It's not being started as yet, obviously because the schools are under a difficult challenge in time at the moment. But hopefully throughout the year, we should have more assurance in those areas to the committee in due course. I just wanted to give you a bit of an update on that was the progress to date.
Well, we certainly will look forward to receiving that information, Simon, that's for sure.
Thanks, Chair.
Okay, my apologies if I missed your hand on the last one, but in that case, I do apologise. In terms of this track report, anybody want to make any comments? In that case, I will move on to the work plan, which is there in front of you. You can see what it is. I don't think I have to add too much to it at this point in time, unless anybody's got any comments they want to make on it. If not,
Chair, one thing I wanted to add is that on the agenda cover is the next meeting is down to the 10th of August. There are no items listed for the 10th of August, as there are not any formal meetings in August. The only one, the next one after that is the 24th of August for the Statement of Accounts report. So that will be the next meeting. So everybody will get a cancellation notice for the meeting on the 10th. That's okay.
Thank you, Jeremy. Peter, you wanted to come in?
Yeah, the meeting on the 24th of August actually clashes with the Service Improvement and Finance Scrutiny Performance Panel.
Yeah, that's moving to 11 o'clock.
So we're going to be over in an hour, are we?
Hopefully.
Okay.
If I come in on that one, if I may, Chair, yeah, I'd given advice to Democratic Services that I felt we could do it in the hour, given past experience, because it's a single item on the Statement of Accounts. I don't want to be overly presumptive, but it's in normal format with the same people being involved. So I've taken a view that we should be able to conclude the business within the hour. We'll see on the day whether that's a foolhardy presumption on my part.
Okay, thank you.
I know I have been in correspondence with Jeremy myself on this matter. I must admit it does create problems for some of us, but we'll hopefully cross that bridge when we come to it. Okay. There's nothing else. I will say thank you very much for your attendance. Thank you very much for your contributions. And thank you very much, obviously, to the contributors who've given us some very good insights today and spoken very well to the report. So thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.